Now, the ongoing Black Lives Matter protests and the continuing debate over some of Britain's public statues have shone a light on the country's imperial past and its continuing reverberations. Our latest report looking at Britain's colonial legacy comes from Kenya. Our senior Africa correspondent Anne Soy considers the issue of land distribution and what, if anything, changed after Kenya gained independence more than 50 years ago.
The highlands of the Rift Valley, where I was born and raised. It's here that the colonial administration faced one of the fiercest resistance movements to their settlement in East Africa. At the turn of the 20th century, British settlers arrived here and found conditions perfect for agriculture. Rich volcanic soil, constant rainfall, and a high altitude suitable for growing tea. These fields have supplied Britain's breakfast staple for over a century. But it came at a huge cost. 15 years of resistance by the Kalenjin ethnic group, then led by the Talai clan.
The settlers used divide and rule tactics. They turned the community against us. They convinced them that the Talai were evil people. You see, they had guns and bombs, and all we had were arrows and spears. And we fought against them for more than 10 years, so they said we were evil.
Once they had subdued the locals, laws were created in Nairobi and London, allowing them to push the locals to the fringes, what are called the native reserves, and the best land was divided up amongst a handful of settlers. They also introduced taxes. And because the locals did not have money, they had no choice but to work in the settler farms to be able to make money to pay the taxes.
That subjugation lasted about 5 decades. In the 1950s, resistance was growing again across the country and continent. Closer to the colonial seat of power in Nairobi was the Mau Mau movement. They fought for freedom from colonialism and to get land back. Many were rounded up, detained, and tortured. The official death toll is disputed. Some historians estimate that more than 20,000 died.
At midnight, the Union Jack was lowered for the last time, and Kenya ceased to be a colony and became independent.
1963. Statues of colonial leaders were removed and later replaced with Kenyan faces.
Good luck to Kenya in her new role as an independent nation.
And decades later, as statues of leaders of colonialism and slavery are brought down across the world, some Kenyans are now questioning how deep the change here really went.
We just changed the face of the monuments.
We were conned at independence. We handed over to the people who were subservient to the colonial authorities.
The biggest beneficiaries of independence, they say, were those who worked for the colonial administration and fought against their opponents. Controversial views in Kenya today.
What have I done?
They landed activist Mutemi Wakiyama in trouble with the authorities last month. Police raided his home and arrested him.
I do a lot of social media activism, and my premise is that Kenya has never gotten independence. The thread that I did before the arrest that traced this all the way from colonial chiefs to the current political elite and their intermarriages and their linkages and their business linkages and that kind of thing. And it went viral because Kenyans could now see, they could actually connect the dots. And I guess there are people there who aren't comfortable with that.
The elites grabbed the independence and ran off with it, and the Mau Mau were left landless. Nothing had changed.
And in the Rift Valley, the Talai are today some of the poorest people living here.
When land was being subdivided among the locals, we asked for some, but we got nothing. They said we were the evil ones.
For decades, this was a detention camp. They were not allowed to interact with other communities. The colonial government tagged them an evil clan. And even after independence, that tag remained. This camp had 2 rivers surrounding it. There was a physical barrier back then, but even now, the stigma persists. I know relatives and friends who would be concerned that I interacted with them.
the lasting legacy of colonialism in this village. A lot of the land in Kenya is now owned by locals, and tea remains one of the country's biggest exports. But the inequalities created during colonial times and adopted at independence persist. There may be no pre-colonial statues here, but this is a country still ill at ease with its past. Anne Soy, BBC News, Nandi.